After 4 days of training camp, I was going to do the podcast on what we learned that we necessarily may or may not have known. We expect it to be multiple topics. Turns out there's only one because one team leader went to the podium after practice on day 2 and stood toe to toe with the media, giving his belief that Dennis Allen and Derek Carr are the right men for the job. And he's a guy that I have a hard time questioning, but not a hard time listening to, because I believe when he speaks, he means it, and it's very, very important. So I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So basically, you've probably seen at least parts of, or at least heard of, Demario Davis standing on the podium after day 2, pounding on it, figuratively, not literally, but standing up and saying, DA, Dennis Allen, Derek Carr as the head coach and the starting quarterback, they're the men for the job. Here's the guys that I'm standing behind. And as a team leader, probably the team leader, probably the face of the franchise, except for maybe Cam Jordan might be of kind of equal stature to him. You got to respect his opinion. He has a very commanding presence. He grabs a hold of your attention. He makes a very strong case about how he feels specifically. But same time, you got to think maybe he speaks for the locker room. I don't know if he's trying to do that. I don't know if he would want to do that. But when a guy like him is talking like he's talking and standing up for two individuals, his head coach and his quarterback, I really feel like we need to stand up and take notice. So Demario was asked a question about halfway through this, and we're picking it up from there. But the question was basically inferring that Dennis Allen wasn't the right man for the job to lead this team as a head coach. And that got Demario and the reporters down a very interesting path.
You know how he's handling that or whatever, but I know how I feel about him. And he's the right man for the job. And to be in this situation, to be where we are and have underperformed, and now we got to rise to the occasion. And I've been going to war with this man for 7 years. And when the pressure's on, he always putting us in a position to win. He always putting us in a position to succeed. And that's all you can ask for a coach. He's given us every opportunity to succeed. And so when I look at it, he's the right guy. And so my confidence going forward and my belief going forward is through the roof. So I don't know about like what you're talking about as far as response, because I don't keep up with a lot of it, and so like I don't know what all is being said and what I was being responded to. But when I talk about my belief in my coach, man, I'm ready to go to war. And when I get ready to go to war, I want him out there with me. Because
When I go to war, I want him out there with me. It's hard to discount anything Demario says when it comes to being a leader and leadership. He's one of the best I've ever seen out there. The way he handles it, the way he gets players to respond, um, and he's been doing it a long, long time. And it's not just the players, because we've said before, we did a video before. To me, he's a Hall of Famer off the field, probably more than he's a Hall of Famer on the field. And he's definitely a Hall of Famer on the field. So when he was talking about this, I kind of cocked up my eyebrows because he could have easily done what other players might do in that situation if they weren't going to back the head coach, is just give a platitude answer, just normal run of the mill stuff, not give the media anything to bite into. But no, he gave them a lot to bite into, and they kind of kept going with this. And he stood there as a man of God, as a man of his convictions, just say, hey, this is what I think. You know me. You know, at some point he's going to bring that up. You should respect me. Not you should respect me, but I think most players do. Most people do. Most players, most fans, most coaches. Everybody knows who he is. So it's safe to say, and he does point out this is from his perspective, but it's safe to say Demario Davis is not up there bullshitting anyone on this category. So maybe we as a fan base, because we definitely respect him, we love him. So I think we owe him the courtesy to listen and really listen to what he's trying to say. And I kind of clipped that answer short, but he went on to say, um, if it wouldn't be for Dennis Allen, I wouldn't be here. He was the biggest reason for my success as a football player, starting in his time in New Orleans, because he was good before, and everybody knew he was good, but he's given credit to DA for making him great. I think that's important to reference, because it is a place of perspective coming from that he appreciates Dennis an awful lot, because an awful lot of what he has isn't necessarily attributed to Dennis Allen, but Dennis Allen gave him the opportunity, and Dennis Allen is a good defensive coach. But what we're really talking about, I don't think anybody disputes that, but what we're really talking about here is he a good head coach? Mario's going to go a little deeper in that, but now that door is open and he gave the response he gave, this goes a little deeper and a little more. I don't want to say intimate or personal, but I think on a certain level, yep, it might be a little personal for Demario. But hey, he's earned that right for sure.
So it actually seems like you made a couple comments on social media this year. Like, well, once defending him, I think when something came up, Tyron started and you followed up, but also some things you said about Derek, like positive about Derek. Was there a recognition from you that the fans had been kind of turning on this team and you wanted to be more vocal about standing up for these guys?
yeah, absolutely, man. I think, man, this first of all, it's a hard game, and I understand our fan base desire for winning because I've been a part of that winning. And when you get used to winning, the standard is high. It's very high. But you have to understand that a transition happened in our organization, right? We Sean Payton leaves, Drew Brees leaves. And so the standard is that they're going to be where they were at the end of their tenure with the Saints, at the beginning. And so I think that's unfair standard. That's an unfair balance. But I've been in the trenches with both of these guys. And when I tell you Derek is the right quarterback, he's the right quarterback. When I tell you DA is the right head coach, he's the right head coach. And I've been here to see the good times and the bad times. So I know, but they're the right men for the job.
And he brings quarterback Derek Carr into the conversation at that point also, which was another kind of punching bag for Saints fans. But I understand his point. Um, so bear with me as I kind of walk through this because at the time of filming, this is a couple of days old, and it hit me right when I watched it the first time, the day of, and that was day 2 of training camp. But it took me a little while to kind of work through some of this, and I've watched it a couple times since. But he's saying, hey, it's unfair because you had a Hall of Fame coach, a Hall of Fame quarterback, both kind of leave a few years apart. And the expectations were we're going to replace a few years apart. First, the Hall of Fame coach, and then the Hall of Fame quarterback with Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. And it's an unfair standard because you're comparing the end of 2 Hall of Fame careers or tenures in Sean's case because he's still coaching, um, to where you're starting from with Dennis Allen and with Derek Carr. You kind of comparing the beginning of their tenure to the end of the previous one that did include a Super Bowl, 3 NFC championship games, multiple NFC South divisions, etc. That's true. That's one. He's not wrong. That's 100% true. Um, Guilty of doing that. However, and this is what I've tussled with over the last couple of days. From the second Sean stepped down and they hired Dennis Allen, what was a roll it back? We're going to roll it back. We're going to keep the culture. We're going to basically keep doing what we're doing. And in the case of the last 3 years, over and over again, expecting a different result. So I take a little issue the way that was, not really issue with Demario the way it was put, but just a little issue that it should be acknowledged while we're doing this. And I think I'm starting to see a turn this. I think I'm starting to do this a little bit better myself. Instead of blaming who's there trying to help us win on the field, in the case of Derek Carr, or overly blaming, placing too much blame, I should say, when things go bad. And the same thing on the head coach, and not sprinkling it throughout the organization because we're going to roll it back. We're going to keep the culture. We're going to keep winning. It was like, it's going to be like that's what they were selling us. And those of us like me who bought into that bull stuff, we're resentful. And I think that's the acknowledgement you're missing right here. That he's not bringing up. I'm not saying that he's missing it. It's just not being conversed necessarily. So there's some blame for those decision makers that did that. And even if you were going to hire Dennis Allen, you thought it was his shot. He's still going to coach the defense, and he was ready. Debate's still out on that one, and it will be until one way or the other he proves, yeah, I was ready, or it ends in a disaster, and we don't know how that's going to end. But people who made that decision, but then the people who made the decision were going to keep, especially on the offensive side. If you wanted to give everybody 1 year, that was fine, but it was obvious after 1 year it wasn't going to work. Well, it's going to work with this new quarterback. And now we've just doubled down on the gaslighting, or tripled down even on the gaslighting that was coming from the organization. Derek Carr, I mean, he's not incorrect in that. It was almost presented to us like, hey, we got a great quarterback. I hate to say this phrase, but this was the feeling I got from the organization trying to push on this, which immediately caused resentment from me. Hey, we've got the next Drew Brees coming in to take his promised land. Because remember, we're keeping the culture and everything the same. We just needed that guy, and he's here now. So we're going to go. And last year was pretty much the same result of the previous one. So I respectfully acknowledge exactly what he's saying, and I think it is correct. But I think there's an opposite end of the coin, too, that we have to look at as a fan. But bottom line, it comes down to wins and losses, and we're about ready to have a conversation about that, too. Now, the part I skipped over was the one I alluded to earlier, um, where basically he said, "Look, I'm telling y'all, they're the right men for the job. Dennis Allen, Derek Carr is the right men to do what we have to would need to do. Um, and he pointed out you know in no uncertain terms, he's saying, look, you know me, you know I wouldn't lie to you, and that's what I truly believe. They're the right guys for the job. Um, and everybody has to the last very part of it was, and everybody has to get together on this or get on board with this because the only way we're going to get to where we need to go, we have to get together and do it. You know, basically the whole city he referred to has to get together, get behind, and go to it. And I'm like, yeah, the city, the fan base, the state, the Gulf Coast region. He's absolutely correct because I think at the end of the year, even when they were doing better, the fan base was just so disgruntled from the start of the season that you had those situations where you're sitting in the dome looking around going, man, it might be 50-50 between our fans and their fans. So everybody, I think he even used the phrase, everybody has to get on the same page. And it's true. Everybody does have to get on the same page. I think the players and coaches, what we're seeing so far, they're on the same page. I'm hoping the organization is on the same page, and they have to be. They have to be. And now it's their job. And that's one of the things I thought about for a couple of days. One, it's like there's Demario being a leader to the kind of to the media and the fan base because they're going to get in a little uh, sparring maybe coming up, but it's not contentious or anything like that. But there's a little, you know, tension, maybe a little bit in it. But he's right. It's like I'm leading the players on the field, especially on the defensive side. And he's just kind of taking the step with all this. I think they gave him the opportunity to say something he's probably been thinking about saying a long time. We're kind of not pointing to the media, but I think getting everybody when he says we've got to do this together, just talking a little bit at the media there, asking questions and others, YouTubers like me with our fan comments and analysis, but especially the fan base. So I think it's really important, especially coming from Demario. We give him the courtesy of the give him the floor and let him go where he needs to go with this conversation.
What made you want to I feel? I mean, did you feel like in a leadership role, I kind of want to stand up and like say
No,
something publicly? Or
no. I don't think I didn't feel the need to stand up and say something publicly. I'm just stating what I believe. I'm just stating my stance from who I am as a person. I don't believe that either of them need a defense or they're looking for a defense or anybody's looking for a defense. I think as a unit, as a whole, we have underperformed. And that's going to be pointed at certain people just because of the nature of the business. I think, you know,
Do have to pause it right there because I've said this many times. Um, I don't know if I've ever said this since I've started this channel, but along the way, I've always felt like, and then here I was guilty of it the last couple of years to a certain degree, but I always felt like too much of the glory and too much of the blame went to your starting quarterback, but it just goes along with the territory. That's the way the NFL is. But at some point, you have to check yourself and go, he can't do it by himself. Not every game. Lord knows we saw a lot of games where Drew may have been able to do an awful lot by himself, using a Hall of Fame quarterback as a reference here. But when he didn't have any help, he could play very good ball. The offense, as a general rule, could play very good ball, but you still couldn't just get enough plays to win games. We had a couple stretches of 7-9 seasons. That's what it boiled down to. You knew this much. If we didn't have Drew, instead of going 7-9, it'll probably look more like a 4-12 if we were lucky, probably worse than that. So it is the team effort. Now, once you get to Drew's level, you get a little more of a pass, a little less of the blame, and probably too much of the glory, or way, way too much of the glory. But it happens. And a lot is said on the head coach. I think the same thing needs to be because I think the biggest thing is, and he alludes to it in this interview a couple of times, a head coach can lose you games if he doesn't know what he's doing. And that's really the question we're asking about Dennis Allen. However, a head coach can't play in the game, but if he does know what he's doing and he's very good at not only he probably has a very strong background in either offense or defense and knows a lot in there and is going to be able to even be hands-on there and somewhat hands-on in the other aspects. If he's a good head coach, he understands all the rooms, so to speak. But all he can do and all the coaches can do is get him ready, game plan them, instruct them, put them in a position to win, and then coach them when they need to be coached during the game, whether it's on the sideline or in halftime, whatever. From the booth, those are the ones that are up there and on the headsets. But the players ultimately have to go out and make the plays, and that's something else he alluded to. The reason why I'm bringing us all this together in this aspect is we speculate a lot on the locker room, and we do hear some stuff that come out of it, and sometimes it's more or less confirmed. A lot of times it's speculation and some people talking kind of back channels to media members who kind of source it out a little bit and may throw it out there if they think there's some relevance to it. But the real point is Demario's is out here putting his name on stuff. And we were always worried, hey, does Derek Carr have the locker room? Does DA have the locker room, especially late last year and especially after the mutiny against Atlanta? If Derek is coming out here carrying the banner because he is a leader, he's the guy carrying the banner and leading the locker room, I really want to give the benefit of the doubt the other way and go, no, Carr and Allen are both fine in this locker room. That part isn't an issue. There shouldn't be any more mutinies or some of the player interaction that gave Carr problems last year. Most of those people in the mutiny and the false interactions, I think, are no longer on the roster, but still. I think Demario can be the guy where we say he kind of speaks for the locker room. I'd be okay with that statement. Or one of the guys that speaks for the locker room. So there may be some dissenters in there, but again, I don't think Demario is going to put his stamp on anything that isn't fundamentally sound. And now he is the type of person that could be the lone voice in a locker room. But I just feel like if he feels this way, other players likely feel this way. And even some that may even have question marks. He is a true leader. He's a guy that can go, don't worry about it. Listen to me. We got this. Follow me. And they'll get behind him. And so as long as Carr and Allen don't lose him, they probably likely have most of the locker room.
When you win, it's pointed at certain people. Like the O-line never gets recognition for when you run for 200 yards. You know what I'm saying? That's the nature of the beast. Just like when you lose, certain people are going to get pointed at. And I don't think a defense is necessarily needed for anybody. So I'm not trying to stand up and state anybody's case. I'm standing on what I believe and who I am as a person. And I'm not going to sell wolf tickets to nobody.
And just one more on Derek, because I know you've gotten closer the last year plus. He said a couple times that it took him a little longer than he expected to maybe acclimate to a new team, to the city. Have you seen kind of a shift at all from him in terms of, does he feel more comfortable? Does it seem like he's more acclimated this year?
I mean, you just look at the back end of the season. He tore it up. And if we can start how we finished, we're gonna be all right. I mean, if anybody judges us by our last 6-7 games of the season, you just look at it. You know what I mean? And if we can start like that, we're gonna be okay.
You kind of touched on it, but do you feel like the criticism that Derek got last year was like people just expected Drew Brees, or like how much does Drew's shadow loom over this organization still? Does it?
I don't know what kind of criticism he got or anybody got. I mean, like I said, I don't pay attention to it, so I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I can understand the desire to win from our fan base. And I mean, We were the most winning team in the regular season for like 3-4 years, and but at the same time, that was the back end tenure of Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and so that was at the height of our organization. So I can understand continuing to want that, even though there's been a shift. And so, who's that gonna fall on? It's gonna fall on the quarterback. It's gonna fall on the head coach, because those are the positions that have changed. So I don't know what kind of criticism was there, but it's to be expected, especially when that desire is there. But winning changes everything, and that's what the real problem is. We're not winning. It is.
A lot of he had to say on Derek Carr. Um, Let off by the question, the fact that this offseason, it's well documented that they spent a lot of time together, um, and a lot of it with charitable works. So, and their kind of Christian fellowship. Because Derek Carr's talked about that, and I'll tell you something, I didn't even really know that about him. Regardless of you know how you feel about the religious side, you got to kind of respect two kindred spirits bonding like they are in the off season, and possibly bonding a leadership where now you've got a leader in the offensive side, a leader in the defensive side that can really take the mantle of leadership. I know it's a cliche, but it's the best I could do. Sorry, but take that mantle of leadership and push forward, because Demario being the kind of the face of the team and the number one leader is fine. But again, this day and age in the NFL, all the expectations is the quarterback to do it. I don't necessarily think it's right. I don't necessarily agree with it. But if a quarterback can do it, I think that's very, very useful. I also think having two guys to be able to do it together is very, very useful, especially two guys that have gotten as tight as these two have, and not have to expect one person to bear that burden, the weight of the world, so to speak, on their shoulders. So again, the really important thing that I'm taking away from this is that was a glowing stamp of approval on Derek Carr. Do I really want to disagree with Demario? That's a question I keep asking myself, is because I just don't think he's a guy that's going to come up there and for lack of a better word, just bullshit us on all this. I think he's being very sincere with his thoughts and convinced in the words he's saying. Let's put it that way. I don't think there's any doubt. And I want to doubt. I've had doubts. I've banged on Dennis Allen. I banged on Derek Carr before. But when you got a guy talking like this, I'm sitting here now, I'm doubting me, going, you might be the problem there, Gotro. So I don't know. But I didn't see this coming at any point this early in camp or at any point in this season where he was going to take the mantle. They were going to ask him what seemed to be a fairly simple question where he could have given the fairly simple standard sports answer. And now 20 minutes later, we're still talking about the same subjects, and he's still standing strong and throwing stuff back and going, wrapping it up right there with winning solves a lot of problems, and we're not winning. And every time he's talked about not living up to expectations, not winning, some of the problems, it's always been we. And as a fan, I can look at him and go, I appreciate you saying we, but I look at you week in and week out and all season and basically all year long going, when they have the expression, what more can you do? I don't know what more Demario can do. So again, when he's speaking like this, I'm really, really paying attention to what he's saying.
It's not an individual or position. It's we're not winning. And when we can get back to winning, it'll take care of business. And there's only one way in this business to get back to winning, and that's to put the work in.
Got to put the work in. Only one way to get back in this business. Can't disagree with any of those thoughts whatsoever that wrapped it up with, because winning takes care of everything and losing causes all kind of problems. Losing is a reflection of bad play, bad coaching, bad management, bad roster, bad everything most of the time. Now, sometimes you can pin it down. God knows we had a stretch where if they'd have given Drew Brees and that offense any semblance of an NFL defense, there wouldn't have been no 7-9s. There'd have been some playoff runs. And our, as he brought up during this interview, at one point, the Saints were the most winning football team during the regular season for a stretch of years. Well, if we'd have brought a defense those years, around 2012 and 2014 and that stretch, um, we'd have had a bunch more winning. That percentage would have been better. And a lot of perceptions, even at that point, would have been different. And that was 7-9 years with horrible defenses. We've been talking about the last couple of years, 8-9, 9-8, with a pretty good defense and not a horrible offense, just an offense that couldn't. But I don't think this can be argued by anyone, including Demario. They just couldn't quite do enough to get us over the hump. Put a lot of pressure on the defense. And he said earlier, very early in the interview, talking about the defense, um, that they expect greatness, but they still have pretty good defense last year. Can't argue that. They did have a pretty good defense last year. And I can't argue if they're expecting greatness, and we've seen greatness from the defense. We did see it at times last year, but not enough to cover all the holes. So point being, he's like, winning solves this. Doing the work is going to get us to winning. Think if he'd have thought about it, he'd have added on. That's all 53 on the roster. That's the whole coaching staff, the training staff, the scouting staff, the cap guys that work on the numbers, the draft, everything needs to work harder. I've called this a malaise the last 3 years. We were in a malaise. We were. I think so far since March 15th, when the league opened its 2024 season to right now, July, and forgive me, can't remember the date. I'm gonna have to look it up. July 27th. There seems to be a lot of work being put in. We were just going back and looking at it from the jump. We were as efficient as we could be in free agency, the horrible cap position we were in. It looks like we got a couple decent to really, really good football players in 3 or 4 of those guys, maybe more. Let's see how the rest of them are gonna turn out. So far on paper, we had a really good draft. And I think our top 2 guys are definitely stepping up. And then you're looking at all the day 3 picks going, yeah, there may be some A.T. Perry types in there somewhere that are going to show up and just go, here I am. I'm going to go make plays. The undrafted free agents, for a while, that was like a no-go. But now it at least appears we're getting back to where we used to be years ago, where it seems like somebody was always coming out of that little group and grabbing a toehold on a practice squad, if not the 53. And in some point in the next couple of years showing up and being a guy to the point where us fans are having the conversation. Where did he come from? It's pretty good. So thinking that'll happen again. I think everything going on in OTAs and minicamp we've talked about and heading, into the first 4 days, everything seems to be on a positive trend. And I say all that to say this, because as a Saints fan, I am guilty of this too. I've heard from Saints fans in the comments. I've talked to Saints fans about this. It's like you're almost constantly waiting for the shoe to drop. That no, this can't be real. This can't be real. And I think a big part of where the next shoe will drop, or where the Saints fans have kind of a nervous issue, or looking to go, look, this seems to be going also well, but it may not. And already, as he pointed out, are swiveling the guns and getting ready to take shots at DA and Derek Carr. And again, as he said, those are the guys that are going to take the most heat, regardless of what the reasons are, as a general rule. And I think a lot of fans sometimes will step back after a while. I know I did. I needed some distance from last season to kind of look back and go, probably threw too much blame on Derek Carr for the offense was. Some of it was his. Do not take that statement out of context. But I may have piled up. I may have been one of those guys that piled up a little bit too much on him. DA, however, is one that to bring up what Jason brought up when we did the State of the Saints podcast, that he's never really heard players come out and just stand up as I want to play for that guy type comments and type even when you can see it on the field or whatever. But he brought up Sean. There was yes, that there was plenty of players that talked about, man, he is so great. Love playing for him. Always want to play for him. Even guys he didn't necessarily want to stay here. But have you heard that a lot? Not that I could remember. Not at that level. And a little, almost less than a week when we had that conversation. Actually, it was like 5 days after we had the conversation, and then pow, Demario's up there front and center. Just, I mean, it's kind of throwing manhole covers around. There was a lot of ducking in there, I think, and I mean, not in a negative, mean way, but firmly. Y'all want to talk about this? We're going to talk about this, and I'm going to be brutally honest and give you my opinion and how I feel about it. And I think it's fairly. I don't want to put words in Demario's mouth. Believe me, the last person I want to do that to. But I'm just taking away from that is a little bit. I'm tired of all y'all crap on this. It's not all deserved. Kind of acknowledging. I understand where it's coming from. I mean, he's basically telling us that. But you know me, and this is how I feel about it. It all gets spread around a lot more than just those two guys that they're taking the heat for. And this whole thing led off with him putting his stamp of approval on Dennis Allen, going, if not for DA, my career would not be, the level it is now. He helped me out a tremendous amount. And, again, not putting words in Double D's mouth, but he just basically said, Dennis helped me turn a really promising start to a good career into a Hall of Fame career. So there's giving some coach some credit and some love. But I think the last thing he talked about, put the work in because we got to win games. Because if we don't win games, regardless of whose fault it is and who needs to go, we know that the one coach and the one player right off the bat that everybody, like I said, is going to be loading their guns and spinning towards and taking shots at. So hopefully, and I'll end it on this, that he said if we can start this season like we finished last season fast, we're in the playoffs. And that I would totally agree with 1,000%. I don't think any Saints fan anywhere would go, yeah, if you can bang out, like a 5-2 start of the season on that first part of that schedule, then you have the chance to really, really make some noise. And that may be when the first shots are fired if it's too far the other way on the win-loss. So we shall see how it will all play out. So give me a thumbs up if you're standing with Demario selling. I'm not necessarily asking if you totally agree with it, but if you can kind of go along with his line of thinking and kind of like I am right now and going, I got to think on this. I have to draw my own conclusion, so to speak, because again, he kept saying for him. But it was kind of powerful to watch the way he truly believed what he was saying. And I have no doubt about that. And when a team leader, I know I keep saying it, but it's true. When a team leader that magnitude, Hall of Fame character guy, Hall of Fame football player, everything wants to get up there and be that strongly opinionated and not let those media try to push him back. Well, Yeah, you say this, you feel that whatever they were doing, and I don't think they were taking shots at him by any stretch. Don't take that out of context. They were pushing a little bit, and he was pushing back. It was a great exchange, and it made me think. And I'd love to hear what you have to say about it in the comments after watching that. I was not expecting that strong of a stand up for those two guys. Just perfectly honest, but there it is. So this will be the first return edition from a hiatus of Let's Talk Saints, the um, full podcast episode, and we'll start on Monday nights again. Every Monday, there may be some sort of like Jason and I did last week. There may be some supplemental fill-in episodes here or there, especially while training camp's going on. But the full episode Monday from here on out at its normal time, and eventually we haven't quite pulled the plan out, but I can tell you at some point it's going to be live on Mondays during the preseason, and we'll be live every Monday once the season starts. So maybe Sunday, but definitely by Monday. So it'll be a weekly thing where we will be covering, talking, analyzing, hopefully celebrating some wins, but if not, bemoaning some losses. But however it works out, we're going to all be here together. Hope you'll join us for that. And Saints fan, hey, it's all about having a good time, and we know how to do that. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?